Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Bible study. Um, we're going to be reading first out of Isaiah chapter 54, verse 10. It says, "For the mountains shall depart, and the hills shall be removed, but my kindness shall not depart from thee. Neither shall the covenant of my peace be removed, saith the Lord, who hath mercy on thee." There's a band called Amon Amareth. I hope that's how you pronounce it. It is a Swedish heavy metal band. They are not Christians, if you're wondering. Um, in an interview with the lead singer, Johan Haig, he said, "The first couple of songs weren't about Viking mythology. It was just about blood and guts and Satan and stuff like that, things that were popular in the 90s. But he said later on he never did feel comfortable writing about those kind of things, and he was interested in Viking mythology. So he wrote the song Thor Arise, and the band decided it was a really cool theme. Now you may be asking yourself at this point, we're supposed to be doing a Bible study. Why are we talking about a Swedish rock band? Well, because they wrote a song called Where Is Your God? Here's part of those lyrics for you. "The enemy has come for you. Hear the pounding thunder hooves. There's no time to run or hide. Draw your weapon from your side. When they ride out from the morning mist with sharp blades and mighty fist, 100 warriors on a horse, an awesome brutal force. You feel weak and scared. Fear has gripped your heart. You will soon be overrun. You will soon be torn apart. Now, where is your God? Does he hear your prayers? Does he even care for you? His silence speaks loud and clear." Sometimes it's good to look around and see what the world is saying or thinking about God and about Christians. It's also good to be thinking about what kind of image of God am I projecting to the world. Remember last time when I said that people allow us to put into practice what we really believe about God? We can say anything we want to, but actions always speak louder than words, and they always betray us and show how we really feel. So, I just want you to think about this. Can you think of a specific time in your life when you felt alone like this? When you wondered, does God even hear my prayers at all? Does the silence speak loud and clear to me? And I'm thinking, he's not listening, he's not there. I think this has happened to everybody. I know it's happened to me. And the big difference between me and you and Johann is that we have a relationship with Jesus. Later on in that song, he says, all that's left is pain. But God tells us that his kindness will not depart from us. And in Psalms 30, verse 5, he says, "Weeping may endure for the night, but joy comes in the morning." We have that promise that the sadness is going to be over. And God's actions always, always back up his words. To me, one of the most awesome things about God is that he reveals the end from the beginning. He's not asking you for blind faith. He's asking you for acknowledgement that he is who he says he is and that he's going to do what he says he's going to do. He wants your trust because you know he does what he says. He's already proven that in the Bible, but he's going to continue to prove it over and over in your life. And the truth is that no matter how dark things get, and no matter how impossible they look, or how many things have to change in order for God to do what he said he would do, it's going to happen. That's just the truth. It's just going to happen. Can you think of a time when you felt like that all hope was lost, and then God came in and he changed everything? For me, there was a time in my early 20s when I was at work and I tripped coming out of a freezer and the door locked down on my arm. It started turning purple just immediately. I went to the hospital. They x-rayed it. They told me it was broken, and it was broken in such a way that I needed a bone specialist. the bone specialist in Jonesboro at the time was out of town for the weekend, and so they told me I'd have to wait till Monday to see him, and they just put it in an air cast. When I got to the specialist office on Monday, he x-rayed it, and he put the x-rays he took up against the x-rays that the hospital took, and he showed me that my arm was broken in the hospital x-rays, but it was not broken now. And he didn't really understand why that seemed to be the case. I didn't understand why that was the case. He didn't understand why I was in so much pain at first. He did a few tests on it and determined that I had developed RSD, which is a nerve condition. So if you pinch something, I guess you pinch the nerves, that's what can happen. RSD is very painful, and I had to take pain pills, and I had to wear a TENS unit on my arm all the time. I did therapy almost every day, and for several hours. It was really intense, and it was very painful. I couldn't hardly use my right hand. I could only make a fist about like this, something like this. And because it was a nerve thing, I would be like holding a glass, and my hand would contract and the glass would break, or if I was holding something and it just let go for no reason, and it would fall and break. For that reason alone, for many years actually, I used plastic, because even after my arm was healed, the thought of dropping things. But, you don't always remember. You've been right-handed all your life. You don't always remember, oh, I can't just pick something up with a hand. I'm going to drop it. You just don't think about it. And so I had to learn how to do a lot of things with my left hand, how to write, how to eat. And I ended up cutting my hair because I couldn't take care of it. It made life very difficult. I went through that for about 6 months. There's not really a cure for that. What they can do, or what they could do back then, they can give you 6 or 8, I don't remember, it's been so long, shots. They go through the front of your neck into your spinal column. You can't move because it can paralyze you. Also very painful. They can do that, and it cuts off all the nerves in my case, to your arm for like 8 hours. And then hopefully when it wakes back up, it just wakes up normal. In my case, I took every shot I could take, and it didn't work. After 6 months, I came back to the doctor's office, and my grandma was with me. He told me that I had the lowest normal functionability in my right hand, and basically that there was nothing more he could do for me, that the insurance company would no longer pay for all my therapy because it was never going to get any better. And as soon as the therapy stopped, it would begin to go back downhill. And more or less for the rest of my life, I was going to have to take pain pills and wear the TENS unit to cope with the pain. I was devastated, to say the least. I mean, I was 20 years old. I didn't want to be disabled with my right hand. My grandmother, who was with me, asked him, so you're telling me there's nothing that can be done? And he said, ma'am, he said, even God couldn't heal that arm. And my grandma said, oh, we're not listening to that. And she was like, get your stuff, we're leaving. And so we walked out of the office and walked back to the car, and I was crying. And my grandma was like, listen, she said, I don't want you to listen to that. She said, the only reason something like that ever happens, the only reason God ever allows something like that to be said, is because he's fixing to prove it wrong. She said, you're going to church tonight. And I was like, Grandma, I don't want to go to church tonight. Like, I'm tired, I'm upset, my arm is hurting. And she was like, Andrea, you're going to church tonight, and God's going to heal your arm. And I was like, I don't know about all that. And she was like, no, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. She said, Grandma can't go with you. I'm tired. I can't do it. I can't sit like that after all day. She was like, but you're going to go. And she said, I'm going to sit at home and I'm going to pray. And she said, when you come back in this house, she said, that arm is going to be healed. And she said, this is just going to be like a nightmare. It's going to be over. So she had a church that was right across from her house, First Assembly of God on Stone Street there in Jonesboro. And so I walked over there, and they were having a revival. The guy had been all over the world. He took a cross with him and just walked around with it and witnessed to people. And he gave his testimony. And when he was done, he invited people to come up on stage and carry that cross. He said he felt like that there was people out in the audience that God wanted to heal. And that if you would come up there and carry the cross, do something that you would normally never do, it wouldn't be because you were carrying the cross, but because you had faith in God and God was going to heal people. And so of course, when I came in, I sat in the very back. That church was packed out. There were like probably more than 500 people in there. It's a pretty big church. And when he said all that, and I was like, no way I'm doing that. He asked for everybody to stand up, so I stood up. And he said, I'm going to count to 3, and then I want you to come up here. And I was like, whatever, And I was just standing there, and he's like, 1, and I was like, I'm not doing that. And he was like, 2, and I was like, there is no way I'm doing that. And he said 3, and I walked right out into the aisle, and I was walking up to the stage. I wish I could say when I was doing that I had spiritual thoughts, or, I knew God was going to do it. But the truth is that I was thinking things like, am I crazy? Why am I doing this? And then at the same time, I was thinking, because I can't go home and tell Grandma, like, I'm not healed. Like, she's expecting me to come home with my arm healed. What am I supposed to do? I don't know what to do. And so I got up there on the stage. There were probably, 5, 6, less than 10 for sure, people who came up there. I was probably 4th or 5th in line. When he got to me, of course, he saw those wires and stuff from the TENS unit. I connected my arm hanging out my sleeve, and he was like, ooh, can you carry this? And I was like, I think so. And he said, here, do you want to wear my crown of thorns? And I was like, no. And so I took that cross, and I was carrying it across the stage, and I was like, why am I doing this? And then I was like, God, I need you to heal my arm. What am I going to do? How am I going to go home and tell my grandma? I was like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to think about all this stuff. And I just, carried it across the stage, carried it back, gave it back to him, walked down from the stage, walked all the way back down the aisle, back to the back of the sanctuary to my seat. I was standing there for a minute or two when I realized that my arm wasn't hurting. And when you've been in constant pain for 6 months, so much that you're taking painkillers and wearing a TENS unit and it still hurts, and it stops hurting, you notice. And so I turned my arm over and looked at it, and I promise you, it was so bright. It looked like there was a star in my arm. And when that brightness went away, the scar was gone. And I sat there for a minute. I started trying to move my hand, and I could make a fist. And I grabbed all those wires and I jerked them off my arm, and it wasn't hurting. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's working. And this lady was standing beside me. Of course, the house was packed, and she said, what? And I said, my hand is closing and my arm doesn't hurt. I don't believe it, And she looked at me, And she looked at all those wires, you know, that were hanging out of my sleeve. And she grabbed my hand and she threw my arm up in the air and she said, "This young lady has been healed." And about that time, there was somebody on that end of the building they were yelling over there, and then they were yelling over there. And then just a rush of people went to the stage, a ton of them. I think, though, to be honest, that most of the people that were healed that night were in the first little group of us. And I'll never forget walking home. You know, I knocked on the door, and my grandma opened it up just a crack, and she looked at me. She said, "Let me see it." And I went, you know, and she said, "All right, get in here and call your mama." And of course I went and I called my mom and I told her, and she was so excited, and she was like, "Put your grandma on the phone." And so we were just so excited about that. And anyway, you know, sometimes that's the way things work. You know, God comes in and you know, just all of a sudden, and he heals you, and it's great. But then other times it doesn't work out that way, and you know, we're not that happy even maybe with the things the way that they turn out. But Romans 8:28 says this, "And we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, and to them that are called according to his purpose." That verse has helped me get through a lot of tough times in my life. And I may not always focus on it the way that I should when I'm in the middle of a fiery trial, but the truth is that deep down inside, even when things are chaos, even when I'm terribly upset about something, I know that it's going to work out for my good and for everybody else's good that's involved in it, because God only wants what's best for me, and I don't always know what's best for me. The thing is that in our lives, all of us are going to have times when we wonder, does God even see what's happening to me? We're all going to feel like we're alone sometimes, but the truth is, God promised us that he's never going to forsake us, and that he would carry us through the darkest valleys, even the valley of the shadow of death, you know. He said he would force us to lay down in green pastures, which seems so weird, you know. He's going to make us lay down in green pastures. And you think, why would you have to do that? Like, if the pasture was green and it's a good thing, why would he have to make us lay down in it? And that's, again, sometimes we don't understand what's actually good for us, you know. We want something that's not. We don't want what is, you know. And he also is going to renew us and revive us in ways that we can't imagine and that we've never even thought of, you know, and sometimes in ways we may not even believe it's possible, right? Of all the relationships you're going to have in your life, the one you have with God is the most important. Jesus called us to be friends. That's what he called us. He said we were his friends, you know, and he wants us to turn to him in good times and in bad times. That invitation to spend time with him is available right now. It's available anytime. It's available anywhere, you know. When you're ready, you can meet him, right? And so we just need to become very intentional about our relationship with God in the same way that we need to be intentional about our relationships with people. So I want you to take a moment of your time and just think about some of the things that happen that distract you from spending time with the Lord. You know, we all have good intentions and start, you know, Bible studies and we start reading our Bible, but there are things that always get in the way. You know, we have so many things that we love, our hobbies or TV, you know, music, whatever it is. So I want you to think about the things that really easily distract you. And then I'm going to ask you a simple question. what are you going to do about that? You know, you have got to start spending time with Jesus. And I teach the youth at my church. I've been doing that for quite a few years now. And I always tell them there's so many promises in the Bible that God makes us, but you cannot stand on a promise of God if you don't know what's in there. So in order to know what's in there, in order to learn who God is, in order to build your friendship, you have to spend time in the Word. So Proverbs 27 verse 9 says, "The heartfelt counsel of a friend is as sweet as perfume and incense." So that's going to lead us right up to our friendship challenge for this week, okay? So here's what I want you to do for this week. Take a blank piece of paper and write down at least 5 things that you consider to be essential in a good friend, okay? Examples: honesty, trustworthiness, compassion, must love K-pop, I don't know, whatever things, that you think are absolutely essential, okay? Write those down, at least 5. You're going to come up with more, but at least 5, okay? Over the next week, consider all your friendships, right? And think, do I possess these qualities? Am I being this kind of friend to Michelle, right? Or, whoever. And then ask yourself back, what about my friends? Do they possess these qualities? Are they being this kind of friend for me, right? And I also want you to take some time to look into the scriptures and identify the qualities that you've chosen. Identify them in God. Look and see what the scriptures say. Is he trustworthy? Is he compassionate? Is he kind? Is he patient? The different qualifications that you come up with, things that you think they're important. Look and see if God has those. You may be surprised by the things you find out. I'm sure that all of us can become a better friend to our friends, but you may find that you're also in need of some really good friends, right? The Bible says in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 33, "Do not be deceived. Bad company corrupts good morals." It also says in Psalms chapter 1, verse 1 and 2, "Blessed is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly." So here's the thing. True friends give counsel to us that is sweet, that is helpful, and even when you don't like what they say, they give you counsel that's good for you and that helps you to move closer to God and His will for your life, and not just rely so much upon yourself and your limited understanding and the things that you want. Okay, if they love you, if they truly love you, they're going to encourage you to do what's best for you, even when it's hard. Remember that God's counsel always leads us toward a life full of purpose, full of His peace and His perfect will. Okay, He wants us to trust that no matter what challenges we face, we're going to do it together. Yeah, because He's with us. He's always with us. So, the thing is, I'm not saying that you can't be friends with everybody, but I am saying the people that are closest to you, the people that you trust, okay, the people definitely that you get counsel from, it is essential that those people are godly people. Make sure that you're not taking counsel from people who live a lifestyle that's offensive to God, because you want to be moving forward in your relationship with Him, and you want friends that have your back, right? Okay. Now the discipleship challenge for the week. Okay, 2 Corinthians chapter 9, verses 10 through 12. For God is the one who provides seed for the farmers and then bread to eat. In the same way, He will provide and increase your resources and then produce a great harvest of generosity in you. Yes, you will be enriched in every way so that you can always be generous. And when you take those gifts to those who need them, they will thank God. So, two good things will come as a result of your ministry of giving. The needs of the believers in Jerusalem will be met, and they will joyfully express their thanks to God. So, here's what I want you to think about. Are there areas of your life that you are hesitant to depend on God for? Do you only try to do what you can easily accomplish on your own? Here's the thing. God is never going to call you to anything you can do by yourself. You don't need Him to accomplish those things. If He calls you to something, it's going to be something that there is no way, absolutely no way to do it. You're not qualified. You don't have what you need. There's no way, because He is going to help you with that. So, when we look to God for our provision, whether that's in our finances, whether that's for spiritual growth, or even in friendships, okay, it produces a greater generosity in us. When God gives you something, okay, when He gives you an understanding of how much He loves you, right, and you suddenly have that wealth of knowledge, right, it produces generosity in us, and then you can share what He gives you, and you have more to give because He's given it to you and you're giving it to somebody else, right? Also, other people who benefit from our generosity, their needs are met. If you become a better friend, or if you are able to, help somebody that needs a jacket and you have two, whatever the thing is, their needs are met, and then they thank God for it. So I just want you to, as you go through your week this week, remember, friendship reminds us that we are not alone. It also reminds us that we are lovable, and we need that. We forget that. So make sure that you are shifting some of your valuable time and your energy this week into your friends, and see what happens. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week.